Welcome to the latest episode of the Claus Corner. Back in 2005, I took one of the best vacations ever. The destination, Romania. Many people ask, why the hell would you want to go there? Simple. I love history, especially the history of Vlad Dracula, aka Vlad the Impaler. I also love horror movies, especially Dracula. And third, the country is beautiful. Several weeks ago, I saw an ad on Facebook, or actually it was a post from one of my friends, for the restaurant, Transilvania Restaurant and Bar in East Haven. My wife and I, along with my Vlad action figure, rushed down there immediately. I met the owner. She was extremely friendly, as well as being extremely knowledgeable regarding the past as well as the present. So I told her all about the show and how much I would love to have her as a guest. So without further ado, please welcome Alina to the Claus Corner to discuss her restaurant, the history of Vlad, her experiences growing up in communist Romania, and much, much more. Alina, how are you?
I'm good. How are you guys? Thank you for inviting me here today.
Oh, yeah, no, thank you very much for coming. So as I mentioned in the intro, a friend of mine went there. He was posting pictures, and I loved Romania. That was the best vacation. I love the history of Vlad Tepes, which means the Impaler, and I loved the whole horror movie aspect of it. So when I went there, I want to start with your restaurant first, because for people who live in Connecticut, it's in East Haven, Connecticut. And what is the address so people can know where to find it?
Our address is 23 Main Street in East Haven. We are right across the Twin Pines Diner.
Yes. And how long have you owned that restaurant?
It's a year and a half now. Previous, we had Cafe Transylvania for about 2 years. We were located in Fairfield.
Okay, so this wasn't the first location. And what was the restaurant that you in East Haven? What was it before you owned it?
So before we owned it was empty, was nothing for about 2 years. I found the place in 2019, and you said you've been to Romania. So when I saw the place, I was like, oh my God, this is just like in Romania. Like the wood inside matches the interior of the Vlad the Impaler castle, the Bran castle. Then I was like, this is the perfect location for me. But I was supposed to sign the lease on March 2020, and we all know how that went. So
yeah.
I end up not signing the lease, and I took a very small place in Fairfield just because it already was there already, and it was more like a takeout. And we did takeout for about 2 years, but I had this location in my mind, and I was keep bugging the landlords, and I think after all, they couldn't just get rid of me, so they had to, lease me the building.
I love it. As you mentioned, the interior reminded me of all the different buildings I was in Romania. I love the atmosphere. I love the food. So I want to talk about the atmosphere first. Throughout the restaurant, you have different areas, and you have facts and figures about Vlad, about Romania. And we're going to get into the history, or at least some of the history of Vlad the Impaler, Vlad Dracula, because I find his story so interesting. But one of the things he had a sick sense of humor. And one of the things that I laughed at so hard when I was walking through your restaurant, I guess somebody was complaining about the stench of all the dead bodies that he impaled. So what did Vlad do to make him feel better about that?
He hung him on the ceiling so he can't feel the smell anymore.
Another thing I want to talk about Vlad a little bit later, but another thing that, like I said, he had a sick sense of humor. Somebody said he had a beanie or some kind of a hat on, and they're like, well, take it off, show respect. That's part of my religion. He goes, well, I want to strengthen your religion. So he ended up nailing the beanie to the guy's head. He just
Yeah, he did a lot of crazy stuff.
Yeah.
He was as crazy as he was. For Romanians, he was a hero. Because of Vlad the Impaler, we were able, Romania the way it is today, not being part of Turkey, and also Romania, he kept Romania a Christian country. Otherwise, we would have been Muslim.
Yeah, well, you know what? I'm glad you brought that up, because when I went to Romania, we had 2 tour guides. One was named Radu, obviously. I don't know if that was his real name, or that was also the name of Vlad's brother, Radu the Handsome. But yes, he was an older gentleman, and he said exactly what you just said. He goes, he was a hero. He stopped the invading Turks. The younger person who was the tour guide said, the guy was nuts. So it's funny, like the different aspect of like the age difference of what they thought. I mean, I don't know if they still think that, but back then in 2005, some of the people that were in Romania I was speaking with said that they thought that he was going to be reincarnated and come back, and they actually believed that, but they were welcoming it because they thought that he was a
Yes.
conquering hero.
Yeah, so it's both. Honestly, it's both. He was definitely not. He was left by his father, him and Radu, the handsome Radu cel Frumos. They were left to the Ottomans as a, that was his promise that they will never invade Wallachia at that time. So he left Vlad and his brother there, but he also left them with the idea they will be trained in the Ottoman Empire, which was the most powerful empire at that time. And they had a very rough childhood. They've been raped, they've been beaten almost to death. So they've been trained as being very good soldiers, but they also had a very rough childhood. So mentally, Vlad was not in his right mind.
Yeah.
Let's put it this way.
Well, there's
So he
also
definitely was crazy.
yeah. Well, there's also I made this comment to somebody and they agree with me. It was a product of the times. Back then, everybody. I mean, Genghis Khan was crazy. I mean, it was
Yeah.
a completely different way of living, and maybe what is considered completely crazy now wasn't so crazy back then. I'm going to get into how people were so afraid of him that he. Well, we'll talk about the chalice now. Then one of the things he did was everybody was so afraid of him, so he left a chalice so everybody could drink out of it.
Yes.
What is the story of that, and what happened with that chalice?
The story is that no one touched it. They were so afraid of him that no one ever stole it. Even if it was made of gold, no one ever touched it, no one ever stole it. Considering at that time there were so many poor people and, thieves were everywhere, like they were stealing everything everywhere, but they never touched that because they were so afraid of that. And regarding the stories, you were right, he was a cruel person like many others in the history, but he pissed off some boyars, which were the businessmen at that time. So him not paying the tribute to the Ottomans, they just cut off the imports of goods to Wallachia.
Yeah.
Right. So then a lot of businessmen at that time, they were left without businesses. So they started to, make rumors about Vlad being 10 times more cruel than he actually was. They were writing letters to Matias Corvin, which was in charge of Transylvania at that time. Transylvania was part of Hungary at that time. So they were writing letters to all these, rulers telling them that Vlad is so crazy and they did so many things. So they made him look 10 times worse than he actually was.
So even back in the 1400s, the media was still making up lies about the leaders.
Yes.
This isn't a new thing.
Yes, no, it's not.
I want to go back to the beginning because you mentioned Vlad Dracul, who was his father. He was at first imprisoned, and then he gave up two of his sons, Vlad and Radu the Handsome. And you mentioned, what was the reason that he did that? You said, was he doing that to help himself get out of prison, or was he doing that so they could be raised a certain way?
Yeah, so he was doing that to be raised a certain way, but that giving up his sons, basically the Ottomans made a promise not to invade Wallachia.
Okay, that's
but things went south, and they end up killing Vlad Dracul, Vlad the Impaler's father. So then Vlad swore revenge. So then, when because he was the firstborn, when he became the ruler of Wallachia, he swore revenge against Ottomans.
Yep.
Well, for what he did to his mother and to himself.
Yeah, what I found not really it was interesting, but impressive in a way, is when he avenged his father's death, he was only 17 years old. He was very young, and he became a great military leader who's respected at a very young age. But the question I have for you is, sorry, go ahead.
The craziness also helped him, because he was definitely thinking differently. Like, he realized that the Wallachian army was 10 times smaller than the Ottoman army. And also, Wallachians, they had arrows at that time. So they didn't have too many, weapons and stuff. Meanwhile, the Ottomans had like the best weapons possible. So Vlad had to be smart in order to defeat them. So he poisoned the whales so they couldn't drink water. Like, sometimes, for example, when he used to go to the hospitals, and bring like the people with the worst diseases like cholera and stuff and just release them in the Ottoman camps. And by morning, 90% of the Ottomans were, sick or dead.
Yeah, yeah, that's what I read about that, and I learned that when I was in Romania. It's like he killed his own people, he poisoned the water, he lit the field on fire, he took people with diseases like you mentioned, like bubonic plague, put them, and also leprosy was another big disease back then. He put them, and also from what I heard too, didn't he like to put on the enemy's military suit and sort of go into the army and just sort of like admire all the dead. I was reading that too. Like he would just pretend he was one of them and just admire. And that's sort of how one of the theories is what happened with his demise, where maybe they thought he was the wrong. And his only people killed him, or there's other theories of how he was killed or died.
Yeah, nobody actually knows how was killed. They think he was decapitated and then the body is in one place in Romania. I mean, touristic wise, a lot of people say like, oh, his body is really there and Romania, makes money on tourism, but we don't know 100% sure if that's his body and nobody knows where his head is.
Yeah. Well, it's funny that you say it because I went to a monastery in Transylvania, and you had to take a rowboat out there. And they said originally that's where they thought that he was buried, but then I guess I don't know how many years ago they dug it up and they found only dog and cat bones.
Yeah, so they don't know exactly if it's him or not. So that, Romania makes money on it, so it works out.
Well, I have to say I have a lot of respect for Romania in one respect, the current Romania, because from what I heard, not too long ago, they wanted to turn Dracula's castle into an amusement park, and they said, no, we're going to leave it the way it is. This is history. We don't want to. I can imagine if this was America, they'd be like, let's turn it into a supermarket. We're not really a supermarket anymore because people are buying things online, but let's turn it into a parking lot. Let's make some money from this. What can we do? I like that they have a sense of history and a sense of pride in their past, because I was able to, you can explain this to me. So I was trying to remember. It was 2005. I know there was two castles. Was it Bran's Castle and Dracula's?
There's more than two castles. So Bran Castle, actually, Vlad never been to Bran Castle. There is a story saying that he was imprisoned there for 24 hours, which we don't know is true. They chose Bran Castle. Romania chose Bran Castle because Bran Castle looks very much as the description in the Bran novel, and it's very close to the airport. It's only 2 hours from Bucharest, so they were like, "Oh my God, looks just like in the castle, just like in the novel. We should definitely make this castle because it's close to the airport. We're gonna have tourists and everything." His original castle, the Poenar Castle, it's a ruin today. Yeah. Still gets a lot of visitors, but you have to climb 1,200 steps to get there. Yep. So not everybody is willing to do that. Plus, a lot of stories says that the castle is haunted because his wife threw himself from the balcony, and the legend said that the river was red for about 2 years. So there's a lot of like ghost hunters, mediums, this type of people that they really want to go there and, dig up into the. But that's a ruin. The Poenar Castle, his original castle, it's a ruin. Then it's several castles. Like where I grew up to his vacation castle, next to his vacation castle. Yeah. So if you read the novel, I grew up in Borgo Pass. Mm-hmm. I don't know if you know, but the action starts in Borgo Pass. This is where my grandparents are from, Borgo Pass. So he has a castle there, like a vacation castle that they transform it into a hotel. Mm-hmm. So has 60 rooms, 2 restaurants, which, also brings visitors, but that's in the middle of Transylvania, so it's farther from the airport. It's like 8 hours drive from Bucharest, but still gets a lot of tourists. So Bran Castle was chosen intentionally because it was close to the airport and very much but it was not his real castle.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember which. I did climb the 1,200 steps. I did that, and I did stay overnight and Halloween night in one of the castles. I can't remember which one. I think it was the hotel, the one you're describing. I'm pretty sure that was the one I stayed at. I'd have to look and see at the pictures. But I want to talk about that because the question I had was you said Vlad's alleged wife. Was it you mentioned she killed or jumped off? Is that a rumor? Do you think is that fact that it happened? Because I know there was rumors that Radu was coming. She said she would rather feed the fishes than be killed by the Turks.
Yeah, she threw himself in the from the balcony because she was told that Vlad was dead. She was told that he died in the battle.
Yep.
He had several wives. He had several mistresses. Even if he was not a very good-looking guy, I guess he was a very charming guy for his times because he had a lot of wives and mistresses, and
Well,
he was
they
like
were
that's
probably
his
afraid to say
desire.
no.
Yeah, or probably they were afraid to say no. Yeah.
Well, I want to talk
And,
about
and
what was that?
surprising, all of them were so beautiful. Surprising, all of them were so beautiful. Like
Yeah.
comparing with how Vlad looks.
Vlad had good taste, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess the woman loves a guy in power. But
Could
but what I want to talk about the very beginning when Radu and he were in prison because Vlad wanted to avenge his father's death. What happened with Radu? He had a different take on this story.
Radu became gay eventually because all the years that he was raped by Ottomans, and then he went against Vlad. So he
Yeah.
basically he complot with Matias Corvin to destroy Vlad so he can be in charge. So they end up not being allies and not being very good friends. So Radu was a traitor.
So Radu ended up fighting for the Turks against.
Yes.
Wow. So
Yeah.
how long
And
were they imprisoned?
he was in total he was imprisoned. Vlad was imprisoned almost half of his life. So he lived 46 years. He was imprisoned about 20 something years. And this is how the legend also starts being a vampire, because when he was imprisoned in Transylvania by Matias Corvin, Transylvania being part of Hungary at that time, they were trying to starve him. So they were like, okay, we're just going to starve him and eventually he's going to die. But it wasn't like that because he's starting to catch rats. This is the legend said that he was catching rats and drink the blood of the rats, and this is how he stayed alive. So this is how he started to drink blood, because he actually was drinking blood. But there were other people that they were drinking blood in history, like he was not the only one.
Yep. I know there's also another rumor that when he had the force of the impaled, they said he would like to eat his breakfast while he would drink the blood of his victims. Which who knows if that's probably just embellished, and that's where Bram Stoker took that legend from as well.
No, he liked to drink blood. He was known for just watching his victims. He used to put his cup underneath the people that he was impaling them to get some of their blood, and he used to have breakfast, dinner, whatever, watching, being proud of himself and watching his forest of impaled people. Because I think he is the only one in the history of humanity who was able to impale 20,000 Ottomans in one day.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. Isn't that true? I think we were starting to discuss this when you said that his army was half the size of the Turks, and then
10 times smaller. 10 times
10 times.
smaller.
Wow. Okay. So even better, 10 times smaller. And then when the Turks saw the force of the impaled and everything he was doing, they're like, "Yeah, I'm out of here. See you later." And they retreated and went back because they couldn't believe all the carnage that this one man caused.
And that was a huge thing for Wallachia, because Wallachia was a small country. And imagine the Ottomans were conquering everything. And meanwhile, they were getting out of Wallachia because they were afraid of this crazy guy and his people.
Yep. How old was he when he became in power?
When he went back to Wallachia, I think he was 17, and he ruled 3 times.
Yeah.
And the last one, he was maybe a couple of months, I think even less than a year before he got killed.
Yeah. And also, when I'm trying to go from memory, and I also saw a documentary recently. He had a cousin. I think is it Prince Stephen? Is that his cousin?
I don't know, but if somebody's interested about Vlad, I read a lot of books. I've definitely seen a lot of documentaries about his life, but I would definitely say the show that's on Netflix right now, and it's called The Rise of the Ottoman Empire, and has 6 episodes. It's Vlad versus Mehmed, where I would say it's 90% his life. Like, it's very accurate. It's like a documentary made with 3 historians, one from Turkey, one from Romania, one from America. and they will pause the event and explain what happened. And I will say that's the most accurate documentary about Vlad's life that I've seen.
Well, it's funny because when I went to your restaurant, you have some literature spread out on a table, and the book that you have there is the book I read before I went to Transylvania, so I could learn more about that. That was another excellent book. Again, I haven't read it since 2004, 2005, but I remember I a lot of it still sticks, and I still remember most of that book, like all the different things about his life and his history. It's a very interesting story.
Yeah, it's interesting how, Bram Stoker, he basically, he's never been to Transylvania. He's never been to Transylvania, but he made this story because he heard a lot of stories from his mom, right? His mom, and he heard stories about vampires, and he heard stories about Vlad, and he put everything together and he created Vlad the vampire. But one of the stories that he heard was regarding Elizabeth Bathory, which was one of the most cruel human in the history of humanity. She killed over 600 women, She was, I would say, way worse than Vlad, but she's not famous at all. Like, nobody knows about her. And she was able to kill 600. Yep. She was killing virgins in general and, taking baths and I asked several Romanian doctors about that. I asked them if there is any science or any evidence that shows that drinking blood actually makes you younger.
Yep.
Because they believe that, and they said yes. If the blood, that's why it's referred to the blood of the virgins, because if the young blood, right, 17, 18, 20 years old, contains, it's like considered to be a pure blood. And if you will get daily transfusions with this blood, actually you would look younger because it will regenerate your skin and it will make you look younger. So them at that time, and not only blood, a lot of them drinking blood, bathing in blood, and all this stuff, they thought they're gonna, keep them younger.
Yeah.
And probably they.
Well, I actually do know the story of Elizabeth Bathory, and as you said, so she used to bathe in the blood of virgins, thinking that was her fountain of youth. And was she around the same time as Vlad, or was it earlier or later?
Around the same time.
Okay, so and where was she? Did she live in somewhere in the area? Was she in?
No, she lived in Transylvania because Transylvania was part of Hungary at that time. So she lived in Hungary at that time. Yeah.
Do you think she ever met Vlad?
No.
No.
I don't. They would have made a great couple. Huh?
Exactly. Let's talk about a power couple.
Yeah, power couple.
Oh man. Well, you mentioned this, and it's because as crazy as some people think he is, and he was celebrated by the Pope, revered by the Christians, and also deeply feared by the Muslims. So there were he did have his fans, but he also had his critics. There were people that really loved him, and he did. I think you were saying this before, and correct me if I'm wrong. Didn't he helped boosted the local economy, restricting foreign trade to help locals? So there was some good that came out of all of this, even though the way yeah. So the first time he was in power, how long did that last, and why did it end?
I don't remember exactly. I think that was his longest. I don't remember exactly how long it was, honestly, but I think that was the longest because the last one was the shortest.
And the last time was because he was killed or something happened to him?
The last time was killed, yeah. The first time, I think it was imprisoned by Matias Corvin.
Yeah, because they're saying in the documentary I saw, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, they said either 1, killed in battle, 2, a hunting accident, or 3, betrayed by his Wallachian enemies.
Yeah, Romanians think that he was killed in battle. This is what Romanians today, that he was killed in battle, yeah.
Because from one of the things they were talking about when I was in there, one of the tour guides, I think it was Radu, was telling me this. He said that when he loved to put on the enemy's uniform and he was admiring all the dead bodies, and then somebody shot him. And either they shot him, his own people shot him, knew who it was, or the enemy shot him thinking that it was somebody else. So they weren't sure if he was like betrayed or accidentally killed.
Yeah, he used to do that. Like he used to wear the enemy's clothes after they killed them, also to to make them go crazy. Like they used to dress up in their clothes and come in the middle of the night in their camps, right? And then they didn't know who's who, so they end up killing each other. So he was doing that to create confusion in the first time.
Yep.
He was doing that to create confusion.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. Because one of the stories I wanted to talk about was the time he tried to slay the Sultan. And what happened then?
He missed. That was actually on my birthday. So that's a night to remember for Romanians. We have a lot of paintings in Romania. So he went into the wrong tent.
Yep.
He went into the wrong tent. So this is what they were doing. They used to wear the Ottomans' clothes, right? Some of them used to wear the Ottomans' clothes. Some of them used to wear the Wallachian clothes. So the one dressed up as Ottomans, when the Ottomans woke up in the middle of the night, they thought it's one of theirs, right? Mm-hmm. So they didn't attack them. Meanwhile, they were advancing to the tent, and the Wallachians were coming in the back. So that was one of the strategies.
When he did this, how many people did he have? It wasn't just him sneaking into the tent and he retreated.
No.
Yeah, he had like a whole army. So I'm just trying to think of like how they must have been extremely quiet and very secret. Like for that whole bit, all those people to go in there and just sneak into the tent. I don't know how nobody heard him.
But he used to prepare that for days. Romania has a lot of woods, right?
Yeah.
So they were like Robin Hood. They were like very used to the woods, and they really knew their environment. They really knew. So they used to watch them for days before they actually did something, before they attack or something. He used to think about his strategies for days before doing something. Like he was very smart, and everything that he did was very strategic. So he was not just going there, for the sake of it. He knew exactly what he's doing, what time, and he used to watch them for days, sometimes weeks.
Yeah, a very patient man. He knew what
he
wanted.
Yeah, it was.
And one of the other things he did, which was he took a lot of the poor and diseased people. They were invited to a dinner, like, oh, come on, enjoy this, and then he locked them in there, bolted it up, lit everything on fire, and said, all right, I'm done with all the people that are bringing this country down.
Yes. He used to do that with the boyars too, not only with the poor people. He used to do that with the boyars too, like with the businessmen at that time that, he knew that they tried to betray him or something. He used to do that. Once they invite them to a really big feast, and he fed them all, and he gave them like the best food, and then he just burned everything on fire.
Oh man! So, do you remember the last? Like, what year did he end his reign?
1473, I think.
Right. So, what happened after 1473? What happened to Romania? Who took over?
So Romania was basically. He was like at one point he got united with Moldova, and then he got united with Transylvania, but that was years later. So Transylvania, for example, most of the time was part of Hungary. It's part of Romania only for the past 105 years, and Moldova was part of Russia for a long time. So was basically Wallachia was for a long time, and then it became Dacia. And then again, the Romans were trying to conquer Dacia. This is how Romania was formed. The Romans were trying to conquer Dacia, and they came and they fought, and then they were like, oh, this is a true story. They were like, oh, Romanians are beautiful. Maybe we should stay. So they end up marrying the Dacians at that time.
Yeah.
And they had kids, and they formed Romania from Rome. This is how Romania was formed. That's why our language and everything is 60% Italian.
Wait, how many different languages?
No, our language, the Romanian language, is very similar to the Italian language.
Oh, okay.
So it's like maybe like 40-60% Italian.
Yeah, and it was funny when I was there. I remember people were like, there was people from, I went on a tour and there was somebody from Canada, I was from the US, there was somebody from another country, and we were all talking about the economy. And somebody from Romania said, this is in 2005. They're like, oh, the economy's bad. I said, yeah, it's not doing really well. He goes, I said, how much do you make? He goes, $5. This is what, $5 an hour? He goes, no, $5 a day. I said, all right, I am going to stop complaining right now. When they're,
Yes, Romania is getting much better, but it's interesting because Romanians are very smart in general, and then a lot of them they work in IT, and they work for US. They
yeah,
work for Microsoft. They work for so a lot of the young Romanians, I would say the 30, 40 years old, they are in IT, and even they work from home, but they make a lot of money. Like they will make like $5,000, $10,000 a month in the cities like Cluj, Bucharest, Brașov. A lot of the young people do that. But the old generation, that's the generation that's still poor, because the money that they get from the government is just basically, some people have to live with $100 a month. So
wow.
that's the sad part. That's the sad part, because the old generation is the one that's very, very poor.
Yeah.
The new generation is doing much better, and also is a lot of people retiring in Romania, like Italians, that they make €1,000, 1,500 euros, 2,000 euros in Italy. They live much better in Romania, so they choose to retire in Romania. And then some of them, they open businesses, and then Romanian labor is cheaper than other countries, so then they end up, making a lot of businesses. So economically, Romania is doing much better than in 2005.
Yeah. I have to
But
say,
still, the old population is very poor.
yeah, that's sad. I have to say that when I was there, the kids were real go-getters. I mean, they would, as soon as you jump off the bus, let me grab your bag. Let me grab your bag. And they were trying to get money from everybody. They were just doing anything they can to get a buck. And everybody, and the tour guides were like, just don't let them do that. Don't let them do that. But and I thought that everybody was there. It was extremely friendly. I love the gypsies. The gypsies were just trying to sell different things. They were so friendly. I had a chance to have a couple conversations with them, and
Yeah.
it's just and this is what impressed me the most. I went and I really had no idea what kind of money I had. I exchanged it for their money, and I was walking away when I bought something, and he's chasing me down the road. He's like, excuse me, sir, you paid too much, and he's giving me back my money. I said, imagine if that
Yeah.
was the U.S., they'd be like, all right, dumb tourists, all right, put the money in their pocket. The people I met were so friendly, so honest, and even if they were poor, I never once was worried about getting ripped off or anything. Just
No. There's bad gypsies out there. It's not all of them good, but most gypsies are good. Like, most populations, like most countries, like most of them are good.
yeah.
So that's rumors that, if you go to Romania, they will, take money from your pockets. Maybe it happened long time ago, but that's Romania is one of the safest country in Europe.
Yeah.
So it's not actually happening very often. Let's put it that way.
Yeah. Well, I was talking to your husband and at the restaurant, and he was telling me some stories about growing up in Romania, because Romania was a communist country until 1989, which I didn't even realize that until I went there in 2005. I didn't realize how new it was to democracy.
Yeah.
So did you live in Romania most of your life like he did?
Yes, I lived in Romania most of my life. In 1989, when it was the revolution, I was 7, so I remember a lot of the things. So like since I was 3 years old until I was 7 years old, was a very, very, very tough time for most people. I would say my family, we were the lucky ones, because my dad worked in the army and my mom was a chef. So we had food on the table. Let's put it that way. We had food on the table because, she was working in the restaurant, but a lot of families were starving. And even the food that we had, like when I was 5, I was in line. We used to have some cards, right? We had the bread a day, 2 eggs a week per person. Meat was once a month. Bananas and oranges was not once a year.
Oh my God.
Because what Ceausescu did, he wanted to pay the external debt, right? That was one of his ideas. And actually, Romania, when Ceausescu died, was one of the only countries, if not the only one, I don't know for sure, who paid all the external debt. So Romania had no external debt when Ceausescu was killed. But he was doing that, sacrificing the people. Like, he was starving the population in order to pay the debt. Like, everything was exported, nothing was imported. Like, the only thing that was imported was bananas and oranges. But what he did, he left the alcohol on the shelf. So alcohol you can find everywhere. So he was basically, I'm not gonna give you food, but you can get intoxicated a little bit, so you forget you forget that you're starving.
Yep.
So was a really, 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 that's why I say to my kids all the time, my goal when I came here, I thought that America is the best country in the world, and I still think that. And I came here to have American kids. And I tell them every day, you have to be proud to be in this country. Of course, they are Romanians too. You have to be proud you're Romanians. But I say, here we are rich. Yeah. And I always say that here we are rich, because they will never understand, or they've never seen poor. But me being here, having having everything that I've seen in the American movies when I was a child. Yeah. And I was like, oh my God, maybe one day this will be possible for me. I think most Americans, if you ask me, are rich. They just don't know they are rich because they never lived in a communist country. But most of us here are rich.
Well, I want to bring up two examples with that, because I love what you said. And I always say to people, I said, all these people that complain about how bad they have it, how horrible it is here. I want you to go in a country like communist Romania or Russia or North Korea, live there for just a month, and then come back here and realize how great you have it. And I used to be a manager at Rite Aid, and the area I was in, we had a lot of Albanians. And there was this one American girl complaining about how tough she had it. The Albanian girl comes running. You don't realize how good you have it. I used to have to pick cotton in the field. I had to leave school so to take care of my family. You have it. So, and the girl's like, all right, I'm sorry. But it's like when you realize.
Yeah, so I'll give you an example. When I was 5 and my sister was 3 years old, she was 3.5 and I was 5.
Yep.
Our routine was like this. So the preschool was basically across the street. You can see the preschool from my house. My mom worked in a restaurant. She had to leave most of the time at 5 a.m. So my mom used to get us up at 4:30, dress us, put us in line, and she used to go to work. Work being like half an hour away from where the preschool was. So she used to put us in line with the cars, so, to be able to have bread. And sometimes we would be in the line for a half an hour, and then we used to pick up the bread or whatever that was in line, sometimes eggs, sometimes bread, bring it home, go to preschool, come back, and we had the key. So we were alone for about an hour because they had no childcare. There was nobody to take care of us. So we were alone for like an hour until my dad came home. And sometimes there was no bread. Sometimes you used to be in line for a half an hour and an hour, and there was no bread when we got there. But I remember a funny story. Like when my mom told us once, she was like, okay, today there's meat. So meat was once a month, right? So she was like, you go with these cards and you buy meat. Mm-hmm. We were like, oh, okay. So advancing in line, I look at my sister, I said, oh my God, they have bananas. But bananas were not ripe, were completely green, right? Yeah. They used to import them like that. So I said to my sister, oh my God, what if we ask the lady if she gives us bananas instead of meat? And my sister was like, oh my God, this is such a great idea, let's do it. So we went there. Imagine there was one card once a month for meat. So we go there and we fill up the bags with bananas, and we brought all the bananas home. And when my mom came, the bananas were everywhere because the lady said, just put it in a warm place so they get yellow. Don't eat them like this. Of course, we started to eat them green because we were so excited. But she was like, no, you have to wait until they get yellow. So my mom gets home and she's like, what happened? We were like, oh, there was bananas in line. We didn't see bananas before. She was like, what? And you exchanged the meat cards for bananas? We were like, yeah. So we end up having no meat for another month. But we had bananas. So...
Well, if would you have gotten in trouble if they found out that you had all these bananas? Was it that strict within the communist country? Like if you did something like that, then you can be, I don't know, imprisoned or something? Or is that...
not imprisoned, but there were a lot of very strict rules. Like, for example, you were not allowed to have any relative across the border because Ceausescu, which was the president, he didn't want us to know what's on the other side. Even Hungary was a communist country, but they had way more other stuff than we do.
Yeah.
So sometimes somebody could sneak out the border. My dad used to go out the border, and he used to hide into a truck to go to the border, but he worked in the army. So he used to go to the border, get some stuff for us, and then come back. And then if they would have found out that he sneaked over the border and he went to see his relatives in Hungary, he would have definitely been in prison.
Wow. So luckily he never got caught, right? He never got caught?
Yeah. No, but his sister did. So she got caught, and she had a very rough time, but they did good after all. She has a great business in Hungary, and they are doing amazing. But she went through a lot of stuff. She was in prison twice for sneaking over the border. Wow. So yeah.
For how many years?
She was in prison for a few months. She escaped from prison. She was 17. She escaped from prison, and then she ran off over the border again.
Wow. And how did they when she went over the border? Did she try to come back, or did they catch her over there?
No. They catch her over there, and then they will send her back. But I have I have a lot of older customers that if you hear the stories how they got to America and how they escaped communists, you will think they are, it's worse than a movie. Like, I have one customer, for example, he escaped to Serbia. He swam the Danube. And then when they catch him in Serbia and they put him in prison, he was 18, and he said, "Oh my God, can you keep me here forever? I just don't want to leave." Like, because in prison in Serbia, even Serbia was communist, they used to give them meat and beans and stuff, and he didn't get that as a child. And he loved it so much, but he was like, "Oh, I will be fine if I stay here in Serbia in prison. If I get this food, will be great."
Wow. So was he doing things to break the law so he could put back in prison?
No, he was in prison for a while in Serbia, and then he ended up going to, I think Hungary. I don't know exactly. He ended up going to Hungary, I think, and then they filed for, like, if you end up going to the Hungarian embassy or somewhere and tell them about the atrocities that Ceausescu did in Romania, they would file as a refugee, right? You would have been filed. You would be able to fire. So the hardest thing was to get to one of these countries, like Germany, Austria, Hungary, to get to the embassy, and then you were protected. But the hardest thing was to get there. Because once they got there, they used to, file for papers, and a lot of them end up in America or other parts of the world. But the hardest thing was to escape Romania.
When I was speaking with your husband when I went to the restaurant, he was telling me a story where he remembers his father stealing a gun from a dead guy in the street and shooting people. It's just that, was this towards the end of the communist era that he was describing, or was that when he was? Was this when he was a kid?
It was the Romanian Revolution. Maybe when it was the Romanian Revolution.
What year was that?
1989.
Okay, so that was 1989. And
yeah,
I found this interesting. I forgot all about this. What did they do to the president on national TV?
We saw that live, honestly. Like, the whole country saw. We only had television from 8 to 10 every night. So imagine that everybody was up from 8 to 10 because that was the only time when you had TV. So they took Ceausescu and Alina, his wife, and they thought they were having a speech because it was Christmas. And they end up putting them on the wall, and the Romanian army just, shoot them live on live TV.
I thought that. It was kind of ironic. That's something Vlad would do.
Yeah.
Like, oh, come on, enjoy the feast. Christmas party.
Ceausescu was a really, really bad person for Romania. He was like a Hitler. Imagine that 30,000 women died during, from 1960 to 1982 trying to get an abortion because he got all the contraception off the market. He wanted to increase the Romanian population, and he actually did that because he wanted a small army for himself. So if somebody would find out that you're having an abortion, or they will automatically kill you. So a lot of 30,000 women died around that time.
Wow.
And there were people who up selling their kids because they didn't have money to raise them. It was a very tough time for Romania.
How long was he in power?
1960 to 1989.
Wow, 29 years.
Something like that, 1964 to 1989.
Yeah. Wow. So before that, was the leader just as bad, or was he one of the worst that communist Romania had?
It was Gheorghe. Before that, I think was Gheorghe. I don't remember exactly who was before that. Before my mom was born. I don't remember exactly.
Yeah.
But I remember Ceausescu and all the atrocities that he did.
Well, I'm glad I'm glad that finally he and his wife got what was coming to them. And so, how did he finally?
Romania is doing much better right now.
Well, how was he finally overthrown? What happened? Well, I know the revolution, but what happened? Like, who decided, I'm sick of this, we're not going to take this anymore, we're going to overthrow the government?
So if you ask me, my dad worked in the army, right? So I think the army decided to kill him because before the revolution, my dad told my mom, just take the kids to the countryside to my parents. Do not contact me. Don't call the unit. Don't try to write to us. Don't try to find me. You just keep the kids safe. And he told my mom, if things are getting really bad, because his parents lived very close to the Hungarian border, he said, if things are getting really bad, you go over the border. You just escape to Hungary. Take the girls and go to Hungary. So there's still a lot of, theories, but I think the Romanian army killed Ceausescu. Like, I think it was premeditated. My dad went straight to Timișoara, and the revolution started in Timișoara and Arad.
Wow.
So this is started.
Well, I think. No, go ahead. Sorry. No, sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
I think the army, prepared everything to, kill him.
Yeah, well, and that was 89. Was, I think, was that the same year that Russia they knocked down the wall too? I think, so, with Gorbachev. So that was around that same time that Romania and Russia. It seems like I want your opinion on this. It seems like Romania became a lot better under democracy, where Russia sort of crumbled, where they couldn't handle democracy. It was a much poorer country. And I mean, I know we're talking about Romania being a poor country, but it seems like Romania was able to handle that a little bit better than Russia was at first, after they finally got their freedom.
Oh yeah, way better. I think Romanians, understood that it's time for that, and there's gonna be sacrifices, and it's time to change. But for Russians, and I don't want to, say that about the whole country, but I think they were not able to get the communism out of their minds.
Yeah.
Like they still think communist, if that makes sense.
No.
A lot of them, especially the older generation, they are raised differently. It's you can't really compare Romania with Russia, because Romanians are, Latinos. They are more like Italians.
Yeah. No, it actually does make sense, because the older generation, that's all they ever knew. They don't know anything else, and that's all to them, that was normal. So for you, when growing up as a child, what was considered fun for you?
Fun. Like there was nothing. Like we didn't have, for example, I had one doll and my sister had one doll. Mine was, dark hair, because I had dark hair, and her doll was blonde. So that was the only toys that we had. But I think I think the communism, and in a way, honestly, made us resilient to a lot of stuff. Like I look at my kids and I call them spoiled every day. I'm like, oh my God, I want to have American kids. They have everything, but is this a good thing? they don't have to learn how to survive. We actually had to learn how to survive.
Mm-hmm.
We actually had to learn. I was shopping when I was 4.
Yep.
Like when I was 4-year-old, I was already out there. I was in line. I was picking up my sister from kindergarten, bring her home. By the time I was 7, I was making sandwiches for her. Like we were raised differently, and I think we were raised to be brave and to be independent. And it helped me a lot. Maybe even the fact that my dad was in the army, and he raised us a certain way, but he raised us to be brave and independent, and never depend on others, like make our own thing, like not showing emotion, but not being snowflakes, if that makes sense.
No, it definitely does. And I
And
actually, I had this conversation with somebody else too. I said the kids today have it way too easy, and it's making them soft. Where they're living at home till 35 years old because they don't know how to live on their own. They can't be by themselves. They're afraid of everything. Everything offends them, and I think it's because of what you just said. They have. I mean, it's probably the best it's ever been for people in America, and they have nothing to rebel against. That's why I think that there's people are just getting so offended by everything because they're trying to figure something to get offended about because they have it so good, but they have it too good where they just expect everything. They expect everything to be given to them. They don't want to work for it. And this is I'm generalizing. I'm not saying everybody. I'm just saying that like the younger generation is a lot different from your generation, and even in America, the older generations were a lot more independent and they weren't as reliant on everything being given to them. They worked for what they wanted.
yeah, it's true. And it's a lot of our fault, like the parents' fault, because sometimes I'm like, I want them to have everything. I want them, but is this a good thing for them? They have to learn how to do stuff. They have to learn to do stuff on their own. They have to survive. I already prepare my kids. I was like, I came here to have American kids. Great. I want to send you to the best schools, but I was like, you're not coming back. I mean, you're coming back if you have a problem or whatever. But I was like, once you're 18, because that's the Romanian mentality, once you're 18, you're gone. I mean, you have to figure it out by yourself. You
I love
know,
it. Yep.
it's not that you're coming back. It's like, I mean, my kids are very small and they don't understand. When I told that with my 7-year-old, he was like, what? So I was like, okay, maybe it's too early to have this conversation. But I want that mentally I'm preparing them. You're 18, which for Romanians is like you're already 20, like 21 in America. You're already an adult. You're already grown. You're 18. You're going to college. You're not coming back. You have to figure it out. I mean, I'm your parent. I'll be here for you. But you just have to figure it out. And I'm not doing them a service if I say, I'm just going to give you everything. I'm going to pay for your college. Okay, I'm going to pay for your college, but then you're going to pay for your expenses. Like it has to be, I think most of the time, us as a parents, we think that if we give them everything, we do them a favor, but we actually not. Like, for example, when my mom worked and I was 5 years old, and it was a communist country, so she couldn't come from work, right? She had to work all day long. So I broke my hand in 2 places.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, okay, what the heck I'm gonna do now? And just gonna sit here and wait for my mom. There's nothing else to do. So then I was trying to get ideas. Okay, let me put some cold water. Let me, wrap my hand around. So I had to think about stuff and be brave and just wait there, And I was in so much pain, but that thing made me resilient. It made me, even if I cry over things, I just know, okay, I'm done crying. I just have to get up and keep going. That's the only way. There's no other way. Nobody will come, to save you or to do anything for you. And that this mentality, waiting for somebody to do something for you, I think it's wrong. I'm waiting for the government. I'm waiting for this. I'm young, but I'm already thinking like, how would I make a living for myself when I'm going to be old? Because I'm definitely not relying on the government, on my social security. If I'm relying on somebody else, that's bad, because I don't know what's going to happen by then.
Yeah.
So I have to make sure I have, I have my own money. I have my own savings. I have my own investments to be prepared for anything. Like you can't rely on anybody or any institution, or Romanians in general are raised that way.
Yeah.
Like you're doing you're going through life, but you have to rely on yourself, like mostly.
Yeah. Well, I wish every young kid today was raised by older Romanian parents because they need something like that. I don't care. I know what you're saying, like 7 years old, maybe it's a little too young, but I love the fact you're starting now and preparing them because so many
Yeah.
people get to a certain age and they're like, what do you want to do? I really don't know. I have no idea how I'm going to survive. And I'll give you an example. There was a woman that I worked with. She never did anything. She always relied on her husband. She was married when she was 17 or 18 years old. They were together for 30 something years. She was, I want to say, whatever, how old she was, maybe in her 50s. Her husband cheated on her and left, and she goes, Rich, I have no idea. I've never worked in my life except for a part-time job. I've always relied on him. I have no skills. She was not ready for the real world. I mean, you have to make it seem like, you have to think in the backyard, like you said. It's life isn't always going to be like this, and you have to be prepared of what's going to happen. And you can't rely on the government. You can't rely on Social Security. You can't rely on whoever you're married to that would support you the rest of your life. What if he
No.
died? Even if he didn't cheat on her, what happened if he died? So you always have to think of. I always say, live on your own first, and then maybe if you're with somebody, move in together. But always learn how to be independent first before you even do any of that. And that's exactly how I did. And I'm so glad my parents were like you, and I remember like 18 years old. My father's like, when the hell are you going to get out of here? He would say things like that, which at the time I was pissed off, but I respected it, and it made me, more of who I am today.
Yeah, and it's hard as a parent, but I honestly don't rely on anybody. And most people think like, oh, this will never happen to you. Oh, I'm so sorry for this person has cancer, but this will never happen. How do you know?
Mm-hmm.
How do you know? How do you know? My father died at 49 from
Wow.
cancer leave. He was 49, and the last thing that he told me, he said, do not rely on anybody. Maybe that sometimes went against me, like I'm too independent and I'm like too, but I at the end of the day, like you said, if my husband decided to leave tomorrow, there's two doors. He can just open the doors and leave.
Mm-hmm.
And this is not that I don't love him. It's not that you never know what can happen. Tomorrow he can fall in love with somebody else, and then he's dropping the bomb. Oh, I'm leaving, and I will be like, what? I don't have money to sustain myself and my 3 kids.
Yeah.
You always have to be prepared. Or your mom gets dementia. What you gonna do? You have no money to put your parents in an institution. You have no money to have somebody to take care of them. And I know people are not thinking about that when they are young, but I am, because my dad died at 49.
Wow.
And I know it's possible. And the last thing that he told me, he said, never rely on anybody. You do. And I left the country by myself. I moved 10,000 kilometers away to Bermuda by myself. After he passed, and I just did a living by myself. I never thought, I'm not going to do it. And it was very hard times, because a lot of people think like the American dream, the illusion that we have about American dream in Europe, or what we had when we were kids, is like, you see the big houses, you don't see the sacrifices. You don't see the sacrifices that people made to have that. So a lot of people, they melt under pressure, or they end up leaving, or they are not prepared for everything that comes their way.
Yeah.
Like, how do you stay legal? How you gonna make a living? How you gonna pay the lawyers? How you gonna go to school? How you gonna learn another skill? It takes a lot of willing, and it takes a lot of strength. And I spend nights learning to do stuff, and breastfeeding in the meantime, or waking up with the babies, or I sacrifice a lot of my time, and it was very tough time. So this is what I would tell people. It's not easy, and it's not supposed to be easy, because if it was easy, everybody would have it. You're supposed to just everything that comes to your way, just take it the way it is, and find a way how you're going to move forward from there, what you're going to do.
Yeah.
But never rely on anybody. And especially, and I hear a lot of people, even when they come to my restaurant and they talk, like, oh, I'm gonna get this, when I'm gonna get this, I'm gonna get this, when my uncle is gonna die, I'm gonna get. You don't know what's happening when my uncle is gonna die. Maybe he has a testament, maybe he leaves everything to his dog, I don't know. you know.
No, I've seen things like that happen. So yeah, always don't expect it just to be handed to you. Pretend like it's not there, and so you know you can survive on your own. So when you left, did you have any family that you left in Romania, and you went on when you left on your own to Bermuda?
Yeah, it was everybody was there when I left. I met my husband in Bermuda actually, and he was from Transylvania as well.
Yeah.
But when I left by myself. I moved to Bermuda because I had my own business since I was 21, and because of I was having my wedding agency. And when 2008 came, it really hit me hard because a lot of people were breaking up, not doing the wedding anymore. You know, I had to basically, I was like, either I'm leaving, or either I'm just gonna, some bank is just gonna, put me in the window for owning the money. So I had to take the decision to leave, and yeah, I never looked back.
Yeah. Well, I have to say, Romania was my all-time favorite vacation. My second best vacation was a cruise to Bermuda. I love that place. It's funny, you went to my two favorite places. You grew up in my two favorite places that I've been to. And what made you pick Bermuda? Because that is a very expensive place to live.
I think it Bermuda won the most expensive place on earth after Bora Bora a few years ago. I don't know if it's still the most expensive. A friend of mine came to Bermuda, and I was desperate. My business was collapsing. 2008 was there. Everything was like, everybody was panicking. And I'm like, a friend of mine, a cousin of mine, actually, he came from Bermuda, and I was like, oh, what did you do there? And he's like, I was a server. I was like, oh, I can be a server. I've never been one, but I can be one. So I lied in my resume. But to get to this hotel was a very fancy hotel. You had to have a lot of experience. You had to have, you know, a lot of stuff. But I was like, I don't care. I'm going.
Yeah, all right.
So I knew from him that he made money there, and I was like, that's the thing. So I made two statements. I wanted to save my business at that time. That was my plan, and to bring my mom and my sister to Bermuda. So I was able to do it in the first year. I paid all my debt and I brought them to Bermuda. I was like, but then I met my husband, and we decided to move here.
Yeah. Well, how long did you live in Bermuda?
Almost 4 years.
4 years.
Yeah.
So what
I
about
loved it.
the rest of you? Oh, it's such. I mean, I was only there for a couple days because the cruise stayed for about 4 days, and then went back out to sea, and then they went to Maine. So I didn't, but I got a chance to travel the whole island because the whole island is 21 miles, I think, 21 miles long. It's a
Yes.
very small island, but the beaches are beautiful. The people are extremely friendly, just like in Romania. I'll give you an example.
Yeah.
They everywhere we had a bus tour, everybody's beeping at each other. And I was making a joke. I said, if you were back in the US, people would be giving you the finger. And he goes, oh, yeah, it's a lot different. Everybody's here saying hi to you. And what I thought was funny, too, with Bermuda was they said, oh, yeah, this part is the ghetto. And it was one of the nicest areas. Like, it's not like other ghettos. This is like the poor section, which is not a poor section at all. There's the whole
Yeah.
the whole island is just beautiful.
Yes, Bermuda is very expensive. Like when they will say the ghetto, probably the cheapest house that you can find is like $1 million
Yes,
for a two bed.
that's exactly what they said. That's because he said his mother lived, and he was making a joke. He goes, my mother lives in the ghetto, that cost $1 million. That's exactly.
Yeah, yeah.
Does your
Yes,
family
I
still
know.
live down there, or did they come to the U.S.?
Now, slowly all of them came here. Like my sister came here, she lives here now, and my mother, she's coming back and forth. She's helping with the kids. So in Romania, I only have like some cousins and aunts. I don't have close family, but I was there. I took my kids in 2022 because I wanted to, for them to experience Romania, and they had a blast.
Oh yeah. I want to go back to your childhood remains. I'm so curious of like how you grew up and so interested in this because what was your parents' opinions growing up like? Say like you mentioned like some of the older Russians, that's all they ever knew. Did your parents hate the communist way, or were they just so used to it because that's all they ever knew that was normal to them?
No, my parents, like I said, I was lucky because my parents were both intellectuals, so they were very intelligent people.
Yeah.
So I would say, they were thinking differently. They were thinking differently, the majority of the people. But you can still, like my dad passed, like I said, but in my mom, for example, you can traces of traces of communists. Like, for example, when I go to Costco, right, and I say, Mom, which cheese do you want? She will always say the cheapest. That's from communists. Like, she never spends any money anywhere. Like, for example, she's like, oh my God, why did you eat out today? I made you food. Why would you spend money, Mommy? But no, you can't do that. Like you can see that's traces. I call them traces of communists.
Yeah.
Like, she won't spend money on stuff, or she will be like, she's asking me to get a sewing machine so she can sew some clothes for the kids so we don't buy them, and
Yeah, I guess it's
because
similar to the people who grew up during the Great Depression. They have that similar mentality where they're like, "Why would you waste money? I had to wait like you did, wait hours in line just for a piece of bread." And so but like you said, that helped you in a way appreciate
yeah,
everything so much more. Taught you to grow up at such a young age and be independent. I mean, it's unfortunately you had to do it the hard way, but in the long run, it made you a stronger person, more, and as you said, more resilient.
yes, the best lessons that we learn in life, we learn them the hard way.
Yeah.
It's
No, no,
hard in that moment, but then when you look back, you were like, oh, this was necessary for my growth.
yeah. You mentioned that like you only had TV for 2 hours a night. So you couldn't. I was going to ask you like what kind of TV shows could you watch during communist Romania, but you only had TV. Like, were you watching propaganda news?
Yes, usually was Ceausescu, having a speech, or like a parade, or sometimes was like folk music. Because I lived almost on the border with Hungary. Sometimes we would get like some of the Hungarian television. If my dad was able to do whatever with the antenna, we
Yeah.
would be able to get some Hungarian television, which we could see some cartoons, but it was nothing for kids.
Yeah. What kind of did you have any kind of American TV down there, or any kind of American music? Was there, or was it just always? Because I mean, they were probably afraid to have any kind of outside influences because they didn't want you to know how the rest of the world lives.
Yes. You never knew how the other rest of the world lives. Like my mom, her friend, one of her best friends from childhood, she escaped communist and she lived here. So sometimes she used to get letters from her, right? She used to hide letters from her. So she used to tell her how life is here. And I remember after 1989, when she was able to come visit, we are still in touch with her, by the way. But when she came to visit and she brought us all this stuff from America, oh my God, like like t-shirts and like snacks and all this stuff that we've never even seen before. And it was wow. Like, even from Hungary, somebody was able, like when my dad used to snitch and over the border and go to Hungary, he used to get bubble gum, right?
Yeah.
Like a tube with a lot of bubble gum.
Yeah.
And I used to go out, downstairs with the block apartment where I live, and I used to scream, I and then all the kids was like, oh, my dad was like all the time, oh my God, you always give it to others. I'm like, yeah, but they've never seen bubble gum. Most of them never seen a bubble gum. So I used to go there and scream, we have, and then all the kids were like, oh my God, what is this? Some of them, they seen it before, they had it before, but that was a huge thing, like the bubble gum.
That is funny. What was when you're watching TV and I'm sure they're showing propaganda. What was your opinion? I mean, I know you were really young. Like, what was your opinion of America at the time? Were they making us out to be evil, an evil empire, and just no good? And were they doing that on the news back then?
No, so when Romania was communist, we never knew anything about America. Like I said, only if somebody had relatives in America, then they will, you
Yeah.
will find out some stuff, but only the good stuff. And then after the communism, when we were able to see all the movies and everything, we like I think that's why a lot of Romanians and a lot of people from communist country decided to come to America if they got the chance, because in the movies it looked like literally the money are growing on trees.
Yeah.
It literally looked like that. Like, even now, if you look, like, for example, you look at an American movie, right, and you see the parent going into the room and saying, "Good night, honey, mommy's here for you. Have a good night," and shuts the door. And I was thinking, oh my God, it's so nice to be a parent. That's great. You put the kid to bed and it just stays there. And now that I'm a parent, it's not in American movies. A lot of things are not in the American movies. Like the parenting, kids actually don't stay in their bed. They actually want water and they want pee-pee and they want to go to the bathroom, and he's hitting me and she's breathing my air, and bedtime takes about 2 hours. In the American movies, it was like about 2 minutes.
Yeah.
Good night, honey, good night, mommy, and there's a lot of things that we thought we took it for real. Like we thought, and then you see the houses, and then you see the Christmas trees, and then you see the presents, and you're thinking, oh my God, this is America. Wow, it might be so nice there. We just get there and everything will happen. But then you come here and I don't know, maybe before was easier. A lot of Romanians say like that came here 20, 30, 40 years ago, that was easier.
Yeah.
But once you get here, it's not that easy, like how, if you want to do everything right? I wanted to do everything right. Like I never wanted to be illegal, for example. I wanted to do the right way. So if you want to do it the right way, it's hard. Like, what visa are you going to go to? How are you going to get a green card? I've been waiting 6 years for my green card. I actually got 2 times intent of deny because, my sponsor didn't fill up some papers. Was not even because of me. So it's a lot of things, that I end up spending with the green card and with my husband's school, because he had to be in school. With everything, we end up spending over $100,000. So basically, it was mostly was our savings that we had from Bermuda working there. But I say, if this was my ticket to get in this country, my green card, my ticket, I was like, I better become a millionaire. There's no other way. Like one way or another, one day I have to become a millionaire. I didn't come here, to spend so much money. But it's hard. Like if you want to do it the right way, I think it's hard. And I think, some things could change. Something could change to, if you have a diploma, if you have a degree, if you want to do something, if you want to do it the right way, it shouldn't be that hard.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
In my opinion. And then, figuring out where you're going to live. I spoke English at home, so language is never a problem, but for a lot of people it is.
Yeah. I remember when I was in Romania, they were telling me that the children back then were forced to learn a second language at a very young age, because that's when the mind takes it all in, like around 3, 4 years old. And they were telling, the people I spoke with were telling me that most of the people learn English because that's one of the most common languages. And they said a lot of the people I spoke with, and it actually saved me, because I took off from the tour and I inadvertently got lost. And somebody goes, they're trying to tell, all they could speak, I don't know if they were speaking German, because I'll tell you why I think it was German, because then they bring me to a house and all I hear is "Sprechen die Deutsch," which I know, do you speak German? I'm like, no. And finally I see somebody from way back, "Hey, are you on the tour? This way." So it's just, luckily a lot of people did speak English, which saved me, because I don't know where I ended up. I was just walking and walking. I ended up, like I said, somebody brought me to a house.
Yeah. In Romania, it's very common for people to. I understand 5 languages.
Wow.
But when I was small, my dad spoke Hungarian, my mom spoke Romanian. So there was already 2 languages in the house. And then when my sister was, I think she was like 7 or 8, when we started to learn English in school, my sister was very good with languages. She has a master in English in Romania, a master degree in English. But she, from a young age, she used to pick up very quickly. So she said to me, "Oh my God, let's learn this language." I was like, "Wait, what?" She's like, yeah. I learned this language, and then I'm going to teach you, and then we're going to speak English so they don't understand. So that's why we started to speak English at home, because in the house was already Hungarian, Romanian, they would understand. So we were like, okay, me and my sister, we spoke English between the 2 of us.
I love. So the reason I'm asking is because the Albanians I worked with, they said they learned English mostly from watching American soap operas. How did you learn
Yeah.
English?
Yes, yes, yes. I mean, I learned. My sister helped me a lot because we had English in school. But like they said, yeah, because Romania doesn't have subtitles,
Yep.
so there's no subtitles. I mean, maybe now I didn't even pay attention because I didn't watch TV in Romania. But maybe that now they have subtitles, but they didn't have. So imagine that everything that you wanted to watch was a different language, right? So American movies was English. Okay, we learn English. Then we wanted to watch telenovelas, we learn Spanish. Rai Uno, Rai Cinque, they had like the Italian television, they had some, so we learn Italian. So you learn as you go because there's no subtitles. You want to watch something and you're gonna just learn it eventually.
So how long did it take you and your sister to maybe not master the language, but get it to where you can understand English and speak it?
I don't remember honestly because we maybe for a few years, but
That's impressive.
I learned Spanish in 3 months, but Spanish is very, very close to Romanian language. It's a Latin language. So once you know Romanian, Italian, once I knew Romanian and Italian, I pick up Spanish very quickly.
Yeah. Well,
So I think once you know one language, you just, I was having a teacher conference with my kids teacher, and they were like, oh, they are very smart and they always like think very fast and everything. I was like, yeah, because we speak both languages in the same time. And I do a lot of like exercises with them where they have to read the book in English in their mind and translate it in Romanian for me. Like pretend they're reading in Romanian, but the book is in English. And all this stuff, in Romania they were common. Like we used to switch from one language to another, Hungarian, Romanian, English, whatever that was. And I think it helps.
Yeah,
It
I,
makes
I,
you
I
think
agree with that.
better.
And I wish it seems like a lot of people from other countries are able to speak 2, 3, 4 languages. People in America, like include, I mean, I took 2 years of French and 1 year of Spanish, but that was in high school, so I really enjoyed anything with it. In a way, I wish I did have. I was sort of, I mean, you did it on your own, which is so impressive, and just maybe in a way, I wish that everybody in America was kids were maybe sort of forced like they were in Romania to learn a second language. I think it's a good thing to know something else,
Yeah.
especially now. It seems like
Just
Spanish is becoming more and more common.
Yeah, here you don't actually need it. That's why a lot of, you don't need it, and it's everywhere you go, everybody speaks English, right? But imagine in Europe, you go to Hungary, it's Hungarian. You go to Germany, it's German. You go to every country has a different language. Then not having subtitles was another thing. Meanwhile, here everything is in English, so it's very hard, I would say, to learn another language. Like they not encourage you. And the fact that everybody speaks English everywhere, you think like, oh, I don't need it. That's my kids ask me all the time, like, oh, why do I need Romania? Nobody speaks Romanian. So, well, because you're Romanian citizens. Well, because we go to Romania. Well, because it's good to know 2, 3 languages.
Mm-hmm.
It makes your brain think faster. It makes it's just good in general. But here people don't really need it. And it's hard to learn because there's no, there's English everywhere you go. I mean, it will be good if people would learn Spanish, but still, it's not to that level where you go somewhere and people speak only Spanish, so you need it.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I think there's not really an incentive to want
Yeah.
to do it. It's more like, why do I have to do this? So and I love the fact that you took the initiative to do that. So how many? I know you said you speak 5 languages. What languages are they?
I understand. Yeah, it's hard because I'm forgetting a lot of Hungarian since my dad passed, and I don't know too many Hungarians. So I understand Hungarian, Italian, Spanish, Romanian, and English.
Wow. And what's the toughest language to learn?
Hungarian by far.
Really?
I mean, Hungarian, I learned it as a child. I think it's close to impossible to learn Hungarian if you're like in your 20s or 30s. It's a very hard language.
Yeah. Because a lot of people say English is one of the toughest languages to learn. Other people from other countries I spoke with said that because just, I don't know, they said they found that most difficult, but maybe, I mean, they probably never tried Hungarian.
Oh, yeah, no. I probably Hungarian is the hardest language in Europe.
Did you have an issue with English? Like, was that a tough language to learn compared to the other languages?
I honestly don't remember because we were speaking English at home and then we learned in school. So I liked it from the beginning. You know, I liked
Yeah.
to watch the American movies. I liked English in school, and they were, they were doing all kind of games even when we were kids, like to learn to love the language. So
Mm,
I don't remember if it was hard or not. If you ask me now, I think it was easy. I don't know if I would have to start to learn English now at
yeah.
this age. It I see a lot of people struggling to learn English, even in my restaurant. The South Americans, for example, which they are Latinos like us, but it's I see them. It's very hard, like to learn English.
What movies were you
Very-
watching from America when they first started coming over? When you were able to see movies from America?
I don't remember, but I remember like Home Alone was one that we were watching
Yeah.
all the time. That was like all the time. Home Alone,
That's funny.
you know, yeah, like a lot of Christmas movies and stuff. That's why I was like, we were obsessed with Christmas because we
Yeah.
were, looking at the big trees and it was interesting because when I end up here, I end up being with a very rich family. So I moved in to help to take care of their kids. I moved in as an and it was exactly like in the movies. So I really had to experience that. So in that sense, I got very lucky, and we are still very good friends, and we keep in touch. So I've seen the big tree, and I've seen the thousands of presents and
Yeah. Wow. All right. Yeah. That's some for some people. That's another fallacy. Like, good night, mom. I love you. That's almost like that to some other. But yeah. So I'm glad you at least got that part. You got the big tree, all the presents. So how did you when you first came to? You said that your first stop was Bermuda, right?
yeah.
Or when you first got
But
to what was that?
Bermuda was easy because, being a UK colony was very similar to Romania. Like I didn't have a problem to adjust in Bermuda. I think there's a lot of similarities. Like people are, almost the same. It's a lot of I had a cultural shock when I came here. Like
Okay.
there was a lot of things that I loved and I liked, and I loved Americans are very polite. I love the customer service here. Honestly, it's much better than in Romania in the sense that, people, really the customer is right all the time.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's, you feel welcomed and you feel like, if you have a problem, for example, exchanging, right? Romania still has a problem with that. Like they won't exchange you things. You don't like it, you keep it. Like here, I found it, like, oh my God, I don't like this. Oh, they would exchange it for me. Like even in a restaurant, I would be, oh, I don't really like this, but I will pay for it. They were like, no, no, we just, I was like, oh my God, they were just, so those things I like. Americans are very polite, very clean. Everything is like, I would say, almost everywhere you go, like they are very, mindful of not throwing stuff on the floor and like
Yeah.
being, not littering and stuff.
Yeah.
Maybe this area here, it's like people are educated, which I love. Like people are educated. A lot of Americans that come to my restaurant have a lot of knowledge about blood, which is impressive, honestly. And I'm shocked about that. Like, oh, people are really intelligent and they love history and everything. But it's a cultural shock in the sense that there's no life. Like it's here, you don't really have a life.
Yeah. Well,
It
it's go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's like the social thing. Like Romanians take like 2-3 hours out of the day. You just go and have coffees and then have shopping, and you really talk to each other. And it's like more like a Romanians are more like touchy feeling,
Hmm.
touchy feely, and like. And this is one thing that I miss, like the social life, because I think American dream is real. There's a lot of things, but you have to work like crazy and, not able to enjoy life.
Yeah. Well, that's exactly what I was going to bring up, what you just said, because I had a woman from Italy. She was old. She was in her 60s as my cashier. So she grew up when she was young. And she goes, all you Americans care about is money. She goes, in Italy, we take the whole afternoon off. We care about family. We care about social life. And I said, well, why'd you come to America? She goes, unfortunately, the money. So she was like good
Yeah.
and bad. She goes, she wasn't making any money over there. But she loved, you actually had a life. But she came to America and she make a lot more money. And another example of that is one of my Albanian cashiers. She was a part-time cashier. She was a teacher in Albania. She was making more money as a part-time cashier at Rite Aid than she was as a teacher in Albania, which is sad.
Yeah.
So maybe like
Right.
but you're right. There's really no work-life balance for the most part. It's either like if you want to succeed, you have to work 3 jobs, 80 hours a week. I mean, or you have to really get to that point where maybe you know have a really good job and you're only working 40 hours. But for most people, to make ends meet, especially if you have a family, you're doing 2, 3 jobs. You're working 80, 85 hours a week.
Yeah, it's just here. Sometimes people are like, "How do you do it?" I'm like, I don't know. Like sometimes I have the kids in the car with me. Sometimes they are in the restaurant. Sometimes they go to the tables and then they tell my customer that I'm 700 years old, and I'm like, oh, just go back in the office and sit on Google Maps and don't talk to the customers. They will say that, oh, you know, mommy's a vampire. You know, she's 700. And I go back on Google Maps. So sometimes it's like chaotic, you know, sometimes it's like chaotic when you try to, you know, take care of the kids. And that's for most people, you know.
Yeah.
And I appreciate that about Americans, that most Americans, I found them being like hardworking and trying to, you know, to get to the American dream or whatever. But it's hard because American dream takes a lot of sacrifices, you know. And no matter what American dreams means for anybody, you know, it means different things for different people. But it takes a lot of sacrifice, and you always have to, you know, to question yourself, what am I going to sacrifice? Because that's something that you need to sacrifice.
Yep.
Either is your time with your family, either is your, you know, if you have time, then you don't have money. If you have money, then you don't have time. Sometimes you have money, you don't have time. Sometimes you don't have any of that.
Yeah.
But it's the sacrifices that you have to make, you know.
Yep. And so right now, you and your husband own, as I mentioned in the intro, Transylvania Restaurant and Bar, which I love this. People who have not gone there yet, if you're in the Connecticut area, you have to check it out. I love this place. I cannot wait to go back. So right now, is it you and your husband are the owners, and how many do you have enough employees where, say, if you and your husband wanted to take a couple days off and go somewhere, are you able to do that right now? Or is it always like either he's there or you're home?
Yeah, no, it's either one of us is there. Like
Yeah.
it's hard. When you own a restaurant, it's, you know, it's a false impression. Like people think like, oh, the restaurant owners, they just drink wine or they are on the beach in Bahamas.
Yeah.
Is you have to really work your ass off if you and you know, it's like if you're not there, then you know, if you don't lead by example, if you don't work, and you know, the employees won't do it. I mean, they will, but not to the extent that you think about. Oh, they will do a great job and then you can stay home and do nothing.
Yeah.
It's not like that. It's always one of us or both of us. Somebody's here or is there every day.
Well, it's funny that you say that because I've had several friends over the years say, oh, I'm going to own my own business. I said, you're going to be married to that business. Oh, no, I'm going to get somebody good and I'll collect a paycheck at the end of the week. Not even kidding. 3 people I know said that. All 3 businesses collapsed within maybe 2-3 months because they didn't want to put the work in. They weren't ready to make that their life. They just wanted to go there and collect a check people, and they just couldn't find somebody that was reliable. They didn't want to. So yeah, if you really want to do what you're doing, unfortunately, you have to be. That's 24/7 for you. Where you have to be there and make sure you can't just say, oh yeah, this will be good. You know, this will be good on its own. But I have to say though, I am so glad that this restaurant opened because I love, as I mentioned before, I said I loved Romania the one time I went there. I love the atmosphere, and this restaurant embodies all of that. I said I love the interior, I love the food, and just for people who aren't familiar with it, what would be considered a good Romanian dish?
I don't know if you had in Romania when you were there, but I would definitely say try the meat, which is the Romanian skinless sausages, more
I
like
did. I had plenty
kebab.
of that.
Yeah. Yeah, that's definitely a must. I mean, me being Hungarian, we have the goulash and the paprikash, which is my grandma's recipe. They are like 100-year-old recipes. So I would say try the goulash and the paprikash. Goulash being like an American stew with Hungarian ingredients and potatoes inside. Transylvania was part of Austro-Hungarian Empire for the longest time, so there's a lot of German or German descendants people in Romania. So
Mhm.
also the food has German influence, it's peppers and schnitzels and all this stuff. So I would say the Vienna schnitzel, it's a very popular dish that we have. But also half of the menu is American, so
Yeah.
we have very good wings and burgers. And a lot of Americans are not very confident at the beginning to try the Romanian stuff, so they will come for wings and burgers like 2-3 times, and then they will try something else.
Yeah. See, I'm just the opposite. It's like if I'm in a restaurant, I can get a burger, I can get fries anywhere. I want to try something new. I want to try something different. And I had a lot of this stuff when I was in Romania. You know what's funny? I mean, I don't know why. Maybe it was just something they had there, but I had a lot of different cheese in Romania. Like all the different
Oh
hotels we were staying.
yeah,
Is that a big thing in Romania?
huge. Like we will eat cheese platters for breakfast.
Yes.
We will
I
start with platter.
so how is the restaurant doing? Because you opened up not too long ago. Is it catching on? It seemed like when I was there, it was on a Sunday. You were packed. I was so happy to see the place jam packed. You and
Yeah.
your husband were running around, taking care of everything. And I have to say, one of my most important things with restaurants or any kind of place is the service. And the service was impeccable. Everybody was so friendly. You and your husband, I was talking to for a little while. The other people that came, they wanted to make sure I was okay, make sure I needed any refill on the water, if I enjoyed the food. So not only was
No,
the food delicious, but the service was very good.
that's the most important thing because I always say in the meeting, in the restaurant, anything can happen. The food can be late. Somebody can make a mistake in the kitchen. Not being nice to the customer, not taking care of the customer, that's that cannot and should not happen in any restaurant, no
Hmm.
matter what. Like being rude or ignoring the customer or not, actually you have to know before. We were trained in Bermuda. We did a lot of training, so how to read the customer. Before the customer has to say something, you already have to know that something is wrong. Like just reading him, you have to know that something is wrong or it's not something that he expected or whatever. And we also tell our staff that if you're not nice to the customer, we're just gonna impale you in the garden. So we never had a problem with that.
Those fear tactics work every time.
Yes, yes. We never had a problem with the service. You can read the reviews. There was no, maybe you can see reviews. They were waiting too long for the food at the beginning, but they never had a problem with the service. So we never end up impaling anyone, but it's good to throw it out there just to make sure they treat the customers like kings.
My new nickname for you is Alina Tepes.
Yeah.
Alina the
Because you know
Impaler.
what? Especially now, and I always tell people, I say, people, the customer will not remember your name,
Hmm.
but they will remember how you made him or her feel. They will remember how he felt. If
Yep.
you listen to the people, they will say, "Oh, I'm not going there because I didn't feel good." Oh, because the service. Do they remember how the server looked or what was his name? Most of the time, no. But they remember how you made them feel. And especially now, with the economy not being so good, and people have so many choices where to go and where to spend their money. So if you go somewhere and you choose to spend the money there, everything has to be good for you.
Yes.
The atmosphere has to be nice, the service has to be good, the food has to be, because you chose to spend your money there. So I always say, this customer, they chose us today. They could have had pizza, they could have go anywhere, but they chose to be here today to
Hmm.
spend the money with us. So you have to make sure, they are having not a good time, a great time.
Yeah.
They are
And
having a great time.
and I can say the one time I went there, and I cannot wait to go back. I had the best time. It was just almost like walking back into Romania. It was just so great. The atmosphere was great. As I mentioned, the service was impeccable. The food was delicious. It was like 5 star everywhere I went. I loved it. And I'm going to tell you like how important because all the jobs I've had, I've always been dealing with customer service. I was a manager at Rite Aid, and we had 15 stores in each district. Every store I had, I was number one in the district for, they have the surveys on the receipts.
Yeah.
Then I went to CVS. I was number one in the region, which is 3 states, Connecticut, Rhode Island, Massachusetts. And they had to pick somebody out of all the CVSs who best represented customer engagement. And they picked me for one time. So I know I pride myself in customer service, and that's what I look for when I go somewhere. And I have to say, you definitely don't have to worry about that at your restaurant from what I saw. Like, you definitely, I don't think there's going to be any future impalings, because everybody did a great job when I was there.
They better do it. They better take it into customer.
Well, I used to tell my cashiers, I said, people don't come here. They can get Bayer aspirin anywhere. They come here because they love this place. And I actually had somebody come up to me one time. I was at a restaurant, and they're like, I want to thank you. I didn't recognize who he was. He goes, you probably don't remember me. I'm a customer at Rite Aid. I said, oh, he goes, every time you come in here, you're so friendly. He goes, I live right down the street, but I drive 2 towns over just because I love the service I get at your store. And I said, I know that. The people you see, and I love people like you that get that, because so many people, unfortunately, going back to a lot of the younger kids, whenever I go to a place, a lot of the younger kids, they just don't really care. They're on their phone. They're not paying attention. They can care less. They're like, I don't know how many times I have to go and get them to say, can I have another water? Can I have some more of this? And it's funny, because a lot of people used to say, they talk about being prejudiced or, age discrimination. I would hire only, for the most part, semi-retired people who needed a part-time job so they could pay the rest, because they were the best. They needed a job. They knew how to do work. They weren't afraid to do work. They never complained. It was the young kids I had the issues with, because they're like, I'm tired. Oh my God, I've worked so long. It's like, you've worked here for 3 hours. You can get to work. So it's
it's always like that.
Yeah.
It's always that.
Well, I had a great time talking to you about Vlad, talking about your time in Romania, talking about the restaurant. Is there anything that you want to talk about before we go that I missed?
I just want to invite everybody to try Romanian food. That was my main goal. I wanted to introduce our food, our tradition, to introduce Vlad the Impaler, to introduce our culture to Americans. And we are the only Romanian restaurant in the state of Connecticut. So I would say to anybody, if you want to try something fresh, homemade, never frozen, Romanian food, you should definitely come to Transylvania.
I cannot agree more. I love the place. I highly recommend it. So as soon as you're done watching this interview, go right to Transilvania Restaurant and Bar. Thank you very much, Alina. I really do appreciate it. What was that?
I appreciate everything. It was such a nice night. This is self-care for me. Having 3 kids in the business, this was actually self-care. So I appreciated having a nice history lesson and learning stuff from you. I appreciate it a lot.
Oh, I really do appreciate it. We should have like a weekly therapy session. Once a week, you can go to the car and we can just talk about different
that
things.
will be nice. That will be nice. That will help a lot.
I will see you next week.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Have a great night.
You as well. That wraps up the latest episode of The Claw's Corner. A huge thanks goes out to Alina, owner of the Transilvania Restaurant and Bar, located on 23 Main Street in East Haven, Connecticut. You have to check it out. I want to thank her for taking time out of her extremely busy schedule to be a guest on my show. Thank you very much. Another huge thanks goes out to editor extraordinaire John Bristol of the award-winning Elmwood Productions for always doing a superb job editing this show each and every week and making it available to all on YouTube. I am also extremely grateful to Joseph Timothy Quirk and Rob Bull for all they do to make my show available on several Connecticut radio stations, as well as Spotify, iTunes, Amazon Music, Audible, and iHeartRadio. Thank you both very, very much. And lastly, but definitely not least, I need to thank you, the viewer, for always tuning in. Enjoy your day, everyone.
Suckers! a sudden I hear, brim, brim.
What's a diaphragm again?
Ha! We caught one.
They're supposed to be weird.
Oh, yeah, no. If you say so.
I've always wanted to be in a movie.
Waiting around for autumn, waiting around.